And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Darnella Ford, award-winning author and expert multidimensional out-of-body traveler with an extensive background in quantum physics and neuroscience. Darnella, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thank you. So first of all, I just, always got to give Jeff a shout out. One of my favorite podcasts. And I just, really from my heart, thank you. Just, it means it's so meaningful for me to be here. So thank you. Thank you. And thank you to the viewers. I want to thank the viewers dropping in. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my honor to have you. And I'd like to start in the beginning and tell us about the first time you had an OBE.
Okay, wonderful. That was the year 2006. And just to give you a little context, I was coming through a breakup. Oftentimes it's said we end up on our path. Sometimes it's pain that pushes us or pulls us forward. And so I was going through yet another incredibly difficult heartbreak with yet another man that I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. And obviously didn't work out that way with this one. And I was really sad. And the sadness drove me into myself, deeper into myself. And I was starting to do a lot of breath work and just really starting to go deep within because things on the outside were not working out. So I said, well, let me go within because I'm really struggling here. And I was doing a lot of very intense breath work. And one night I got up to go to the bathroom and I looked back. It was a night like any other night. You go to the restroom in the middle of the night and I looked back and my body was in the bed and it didn't join me. It wasn't joining me on the way to the restroom. I had never, up until that point, had anything even remotely close to that. I'd always been a very three-dimensional, very grounded person, very 3D reality, see, hear, feel, smell, touch, five senses kind of girl. And in that moment, when I looked back at my body, for a second, I freaked out because I thought, oh my God, have I died? That was my first question. And then the secondary moment, the very next moment, do you remember those little things that when we were kids, they had like a kaleidoscope? You could look through the viewing screen. It was like a kaleidoscope of colors. That's exactly, it looked like, I looked up and it looked like a kaleidoscope. And I started to go up into the kaleidoscope and I started to blend with this kaleidoscope of colors, almost like I was going up through a cylinder. And the next thing I knew, I'm in the black void. The people talk about the void. I was in this complete blackness, but I felt the motion of movement. And I had there was no physical, nothing from my reality that had followed me to this space. And I was like, whoa. And the next thing I knew, boom, back in my bed. I sat straight up and then said, what was that? So I had no point of reference or context for this. I didn't know about OBEs. I didn't even know about near death. Before this is 2006, not everybody was talking about this kind of thing in 2006, not in the way that it's come up now. So I said, that was fascinating. I want to see if I can do it again. So as a student of life in general, I began to lay down every afternoon. And I did this for about a year. I'd practice. I'd roll myself into a cocoon. I'd roll myself up in blankets. And I would just focus in my mind. And I just, no one said focus in your mind, but I just said, if I focus on my mind and go elsewhere, maybe I can I can create another experience like this. I say about 25 days passed, nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, one day I just kind of fell asleep without even trying. I lifted straight up out of my body, consciously wide awake, but yet elevating. And that was the beginning of me doing it on a regular basis. Because then I started practicing every day. And I started off very small, like just being in the room that I'm in, right? Just looking at my body, looking at the different environments from the outside of the body and how the room looks. I was fascinated with walls, how walls felt. I could feel the texture of walls. I could feel the molecules of walls. I started exploring in that context. And then I began to expand and started going into other realms, other dimensions. I started working with other forms of teachers that were not all human. And that's when it got really exciting for me because I always had a lot of questions. The why, the why of life, why the suffering, why the heartache. When I started traveling out of body, I started to understand I could have access to things that I didn't have access to here.
It sounds like to me that you have to just surrender to it. You can't mentally force yourself to have an OBE, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a desire. I think I had the intention. Oh, for me first, I had the experience first that inspired the desire to then recreate another situation. I wanted to re-experience what was that. So for me, it was just a matter of focusing, and ultimately, yes, it is a surrender. Every day, though, I would practice. So it wasn't like I didn't stumble upon it and I just all of a sudden started doing it. I would practice every day. Part of the practice was a surrender, allowing myself to let go, and I would imagine my consciousness drifting out of my body. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even know really what was happening. I started reading Robert Monroe, the father of out of body. I started looking at other out of body experiencers. I started reading Raymond Moody. I started going to as much context of research as I could get. And then I just continued to stay in my own lane, so to speak, and just kept my intention focused on it. And for me, it started with stillness, just being still. Because, a lot of times we're not still. We move around a lot in the day and we're always on the go. But I would force myself into stillness for 90 minutes, 2 hours, up to 2 hours a day. That's a lot of stillness. Eventually, if you're still long enough and you just focus, eventually you're going to experience something that all I wanted was that bleep into another reality. I just wanted to expand my consciousness into other. Because I knew that then there was more. Like I didn't know for sure. I mean, I grew up in the church. I was Baptist and then went to Catholic school and then I had a lot of religion and a lot of Bible study. But I only had to take the minister's word on what happens after death. A good sermon, a good word. And I didn't know for sure. But now the beautiful thing is I know now for sure. I don't have to take anybody's word on it because I have had my own direct experience with the non-physical and on so many different levels, with so many different realms and so many different dimensions. And we can get more into that if you would like.
What is your definition of what consciousness is and how does it relate to the body? And what I mean by that is the body a vessel for the consciousness, or even deeper, does the consciousness manifest the body?
Well, you know what? I love this question, and I know it's like the edge of science, right? Always trying to exploration of consciousness is. Sometimes the most simplified version I could say consciousness is simply the pure awareness of being, just the awareness itself. The body itself, and I feel that I've verified this, the body itself is an expression of consciousness, and the consciousness is utilizing the body, utilizing the vehicle of the body to move through this dimension. We are vibrating at the same resonance that the earth field is. That's why we can be here and encounter and experience one another. We're all vibrating at that same frequency. Everything is separated by frequency. Even here, everything is separated by frequency, but we don't understand it in that respect because we don't necessarily see behind the structures of physical reality. Behind the physical structure is there a spiritual backing. There's always a spiritual backing to everything. The rooms that you stand in is mandated by your frequency. The job that you work at, the relationship that you're in, the relationship you have to your finance, everything is frequency, right? So we're all vibrating at a specific frequency, and it's that frequency that is creating, and not just creating, but holding and sustaining our life at a certain pattern. So these are the things that I have really looked at to understand, like develop my understanding of traveling beyond the body, making it purposeful and useful for me to have a better life here.
How do you define frequency? And if someone has a high frequency, does that mean they have a high frequency because they're a good person and they do good deeds? Or is it because they've fixed a lot of their shadow work? Or is it
Yeah.
just an awareness level?
That's great. I mean, and maybe in part and piece, it's all of that. When I think specifically, when I'm speaking of frequency interchangeably with vibration, it's the rate that the energy is oscillating or moving. So high frequency is just a greater rate of oscillation of energy. Lower frequency is when the vibration is lowered to a lower base rate. So when we talk about high frequency, a high frequency being, God, that can be, it's very nuanced and it can be complicated. High frequency being in general, someone who has an expanded level of consciousness, an expanded level of awareness, and then integrate that awareness into their thoughts, emotions, and the behavior and how they move through life, the choices that they make, the decisions that they make, the kind of relationships they gravitate to, the kind of relationships they hold themselves in. It's kind of like how one is creating their life from an energetic space. And I think there's a lot of things that go into affecting our personal frequency, our level of health. I definitely think our diet has a lot to do with our personal frequency. I notice that when I'm fasting, my frequency rises tremendously. The amount of hydration, the amount of water, as the body's largely composed of water. So I think there's a lot of things being close in nature. I think once you're interacting with nature, you're getting a natural boost from nature itself, which is going to elevate your frequency. So our frequency is higher in nature. Mass consciousness, living in the city. I mean, I live outside of LA, so it's a challenge in the city construct, right? Sometimes lower vibrations, a mass concentration of people. So yeah, frequency is very important because your entire life is going to unfold in tandem with the frequency the person is embodying and expressing.
I resonate with everything you're saying except one thing, and that
Okay,
is
tell me.
this whole experience started for you after trauma, the trauma of
Yes.
your relationship, which I would
Yes.
think which would send you into a lower frequency
Okay.
state.
I love that you worded it. Thank you for that. Okay, so let me explain that. It's kind of like when you're broken open. You're broken first, right? And then you're broken open. It did start out as trauma, but it was the trauma that pulled me into the deep, deep immersion into my spirituality. So it was trauma born, but it's kind of like you forge through the fire and you create something redemptive. So when I had the out of body experience, given in context, I had already been 9 months grieving, crying over this guy I never thought I would ever stop crying over. But my 9 month immersion into my spiritual self actually created a condition for me, and through my breath work and through the focuses of the quantum, I started studying quantum physics and neuroscience. So my brain was changing, my mind was changing just from the things that I was studying and learning and immersing myself. So instead of chasing this guy all day long, now I might have a whole different focus. So yes, trauma born, yes. But I took that trauma and I transmuted it, which is what I like to believe that we all could do. Some of the best places come from when you're in the most broken state, when you are down on your knees, when you are down to your last moment, your last dollar, your last breath, and you take that moment and you rise, right? So that's part of being the alchemist. I guess in essence, I became an alchemist, changing the base lead metal of my own trauma into pure gold of experience through these out of body travels.
You said earlier that you met a teacher or teachers that weren't entirely human. What did they
Yes.
look like?
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out which one do I want to tell you about first. Okay, okay, this is where it's going to get wild. So lean in, okay, because we're about to go in. I left my body one day. I was visiting my sister in Phoenix. And it was a really cool way that I came out. I come out different ways, but this one was like, I love to come out feet first. Coming out feet first is just me coming out through the bottom of my feet, and then I'll lift up and I'll be upside down on the ceiling. And that's just fun to me. I guess that's the kid in me that loves that. And I went into another dimension, and it's almost like going through wormholes, or there are tunnels. I'm calling them wormholes. And I was in a dimension, Jeff, that was so infinitesimal. It was so small that it was simply a mathematical equation. The entire dimension was a mathematical equation, and I could not find the end of the mathematics. And from that space, I was told one thing, and I heard a voice. It literally was an audible voice, and it said, I take your thoughts and your beliefs and I reflect them back to you in the physical reality. That was my first lesson I ever got. I didn't see a face. I was literally inside of a mathematical equation. And it was simply what my first lesson, ground zero 101. What I think, feel, and believe will manifest back to me to reflect myself. That was my first lesson. Came back to my body, whoa. Because at this time, 2006, I was just beginning this journey. That was a new school of thought coming from the world that I was coming from. So I began to record these messages and lessons. I also had another experience where I went into a dimension, one of them, I feel like one of the most beautiful ones. I was in a dimension that was water. Now, I do believe from my experiences and what I've experienced in the ocean, there are tunnels in the ocean underneath that are connecting us to other dimensions. I've transferred through the ocean, flying above the ocean, going into the ocean, going straight into other dimensions from the water itself. There's a lot to the water that people don't know. But I had an experience when I went into this other world. Their breath in this underworld water, they had breath. Now you're thinking, well, could they breathe underwater? It wasn't translatable like that, because this is a non-physical dimension. Their breath was music. And everybody in that dimension knew the song, because that song was breath. Now here's where it tripped me out. When I was in that dimension, I knew the music. I knew the song. So I breathed by singing the song. And then I had a group of children that came to me as teachers, and the children began teaching me. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. I'm an adult, and here I am in the presence of children who look just like everyday children that we would see here. They look really more like indigenous children, actually, if you were to look at like some Native Americans or the Aborigines. And these children began to teach me about love and innocence, and they began to teach about not losing the joy in play. They taught me that as adults, we have it bred out of us how to play. Like, we don't know how to play anymore. Once we get to a certain age, we stop playing. And that when we stop playing, we start aging. And when we start playing, we start getting sick. So that was another lesson that I had, the importance of play, and to never lose the childlike innocence, and never have that bred out of you through life and through all the responsibility and all the harshness that as adults, obviously, it's a very different world when you're an adult in terms of the realities of things that you have to face. So that was another incredible lesson for me that I've never forgotten.
Have you ever been to the Akashic Records, the halls of Amenti, or any place like that?
Well, it's so interesting that you say that the Akashic Records, that is, I have wanted to examine my Akashic record, right? And that's some place that a lot of people do go. I personally have not examined my own. However, I have received information about my particular soul path, my soul blueprint. So in essence, I haven't been to the halls. I haven't been to the great place where the books are recorded. I have not been to that place, but I have extracted information about my own soul path and my own soul journey, and some of the unique challenges that I have, but not just for me, but just for people in general. I'm going to give you another really incredible example. I had a really, really dear friend of mine who was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and he was dying, and I was working with he and his wife, and because I do guide and teach and all of those things, and working to support them was very stressful because it was very close to me. And one night I left my body and I saw his path, the wife's path, and the 2 children's path laid out in front of me. And I was able to see how his path was taking him here, and that it was going to take him away from the wife and the children. Now, obviously, in the physical body, I was very distraught about the condition that he was in and what was happening with him. It was very difficult for me to wrap my mind around. But in that space, outside of it, I saw something that shocked me, and it was perfection. I know that seems really weird. Like, how could you look at a man who's dying in his 40s of cancer, who has 2 small children and a wife, who are grieving, and we're all grieving, and you call it perfection? And I can just tell you this, Jeff, my consciousness expanded to the point where I could see his whole trajectory of his soul path, and it was so perfect that I remember getting chills in my whole body, even though I was outside of my body watching it. And I just remember it was so perfect that the perfection of it was almost frightening. I couldn't even process that level of perfection. So now, ground this in practicality in the human body. It's never going to look perfect when you love someone and they're sick, or when you're going through an illness. But what I have come to understand from this single out-of-body experience is that when you expand the perspective and when the consciousness expands, everything looks different. We only get to see a tiny little piece of reality. That's the thing that people don't realize. We're getting a small sliver of reality here. And it's kind of like this picture behind me, right? If all you saw was a very small sliver, you wouldn't know what the picture is. But when we leave and we go outside of the body, when I travel outside of the body, guess what happens? That picture expands, and I get to see more that I could never see in the body.
How do you reconcile seeing things without eyes with your consciousness and hearing
Yeah.
things as well?
Yeah. You're just not using the senses, right? I'm not using the eyes, I'm not using the ears. But what is very profoundly interesting is that I actually have a greater sense of sight and of hearing outside of the body. Consciousness itself does not necessarily rely upon eyes, cornea, retina. It doesn't rely upon sound from the ear, the way that vibrates inside the sound frequency. When you are in that pure state of awareness, how do I reconcile it? And it's funny because I never think about it when I'm outside the body. You know what I do think about? I think, oh, my vision is amazing. That's what I think. I think, oh, I'm so powerful. I can hear, I can see, it's like everything comes sharper. When I'm outside of the body, everything is sharper. Everything is more clear. As a matter of fact, I'm more in my natural state outside of the body than I am in the body. The question should be, how do you reconcile being in the body? Not how do I reconcile being out of the body, because being out of the body is my natural state of being. And if anything, I have to reconcile coming back. And I've had many instances where I didn't want to come back, to be honest with you. I didn't want to come back because the beauty I was experiencing, the other worlds, the other realms, some of the terrain, the geography, the water, the mountains, it's so otherworldly, but yet it's more real. And people will often say it's more real than it is here. The colors.
Well, if you're saying it's more real than here, then what is here? A simulation?
I absolutely think here is definitely a simulation. I would say from my personal experience, I would think so. And I also want to say something very important. 1957, Dr. Everett created this many worlds interpretation theory. Then it was later refined in the 70s as the many worlds theory, okay? And it's parallel realities, okay? Multiple realities. And I can tell you 100%, I support that theory because I have walked in the Great Hallway. I call it the Great Hallway, What is that? The great hallway. I have walked as consciousness or moved as consciousness through this hallway, and I was able to look to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right, and see myself in many different scenarios, many different circumstances. In one circumstance, I'm married. In another circumstance, I'm single. In another circumstance, I'm healthy. In another instance, I was sick. I have seen myself bouncing around in multiple realities. And so I call it the Hall of Mirrors. I call it the Halls of Mirror, or an expansion of the many worlds interpretation. I think we are experiencing one aspect of ourself, but I think we have many more aspects of ourself that we don't know that we're experiencing. I think sometimes in our dream state, we can potentially intersect and interact with some of those realities. And I think the dream state is a doorway, actually. I think there is a doorway that's happening. What I'm doing is just a more conscious manipulation of what everybody's doing every night when they go to sleep. Because, eventually the spirit leaves and you go off as your body's resting and sleep. And a lot of people can have those experiences, and that they do have those experiences. For me, I use out of body or multidimensional expansion so that I can learn. I'm using it as a platform to learn. I'm trying to learn and understand about this system of reality. I'm trying to learn and understand the rules outside of this system that yet govern this system, right? As above, so below, as within, so without. There's a lot happening here, and it's all being guided at a higher level. So my entire query is like, what do I need to know? What are the rules that I need to be able to engage to get the highest level of experience here in this life? And for me, Jeff, initially was just sorting myself out in terms of just something as simple as seemingly relationships. Well, relationships are not simple. A lot of people suffer in relationships, right? But if you understand what's going on inside of you, if you understand your own vibrational field, if you understand why you're meeting and attracting the people you are, if you understand your own imprint, if you understand your own soul curriculum, right? These are the things I did the deep dive into, because I wanted to understand, why am I meeting so-and-so and having these experiences versus Mary over here is having a whole different experience, And I wanted to understand, why do we have such different experiences in this world? And now, through all of my studies and through my explorations, I can say with certainty, absolutely, frequency, energy, vibration, thoughts, belief, but also too, Jeff, soul curriculum and soul path. And it's something that I always say every morning I wake up and I say, you know what? My soul is running the show. My soul is running the show. If ever a point I think I'm running the show is when we get derailed. But it doesn't matter. Even if you get derailed, your soul's still running the show.
Before you go on, what's the difference between your soul and your consciousness?
Well, when I say soul, I'm talking about that eternal part of yourself. And soul and consciousness, potentially, could it be exchanged? Okay, so soul is actually what we actually are. I am a soul having a human experience. My consciousness is my absolute awareness. So when I'm talking about my soul, I'm talking about that eternal aspect of myself that has never been born, that will never die, that has always been and always will be, that is the collector, the scribe of experience here on earth, collecting all these experiences through multiple incarnations, and not just human incarnations. I've also met myself as an extraterrestrial, and I knew it was myself I was looking at, which is wild, super wild.
How did that happen?
I left my body one night, never forget, it was a Friday night, and I rose up in frequency and I went up into the galaxy, and this being appeared in front of me. I had never seen anything like it. And this being was a reptilian. Reptilians are real. I've seen one once. And it was such a shock to my nervous system to perceive something. Everybody wants to know, what do they look like? I don't even know how to describe it. I just think, think if you take a lizard and you stand it up on two legs and deep crevices, very, very, the skin, it felt like very thick skin, dark in color, tail, very intense eyes. What I remember is the eyes, right? And I remember looking at this and being shocked and saying, oh my God, reptilians really are real. It's not the stuff of Disney movies, so to speak. And the entity looked back at me. And when it looked at me, I knew on a soul level that it and we were one. And I said, whoa, I never thought of myself as a reptilian. I don't feel that I'm a bad. But in that moment, my consciousness expanded, and it wasn't me and it was me as it.
Do you think it recognized the same in you?
I think it did, because I mean, of course, you see something that frightening, you want to know whether you should be terrified. And I think I was too afraid to even be afraid. I was so afraid that fear was immobilized. And I do believe that as it saw me, I saw it, and we understood ourselves as one. I've also seen other beings from other dimensions, not the typical when you think of the Greys or the Arcturians or Pleiades and all of that. These were beings that I've never had a point of reference for. One particular being had a bird, it had part of a bird body, part bird, part human. I don't know what that being was, but I also recognized myself in it as one. There was also beings that looked like the stuff of creatures that you would see at Halloween or something. I also have experienced and encountered those beings. And the very first time I came across one, I remember it's kind of like my frequency will rise and their frequency lowers to meet mine, and we meet in the middle. We find a common ground to meet upon. And when it appeared before me, I just saw this rather frightening looking creature. And I just remember its teeth looked like little saws. It looked like little saws. And I just remember looking at it and saying, that's not real. And it had these long arms, and it reached out and it just took a little swipe, because it was reading my mind. And it just, because I said it's not real, and it took a little swipe and I felt it. And I was like, okay, I felt that, but it's still not real. And then it did it again. And it was showing me that it was as real as me. And then when it verified its reality, I just remember saying, I don't want to be here, because I didn't know what to do with that. So I almost wish I would have stayed a little bit longer and engaged. Fear comes into play sometimes. Sometimes you just are experiencing things that are so far out of the scope of your everyday reality, you don't know how to process them. I've also met incredibly beautiful, like physically beautiful beings. And, the stuff that like mythological creatures are born of, beautiful, like they look like mythological creatures, and they're real beings. And it's amazing and a lot of these beings will just reveal themselves and they will let you see them. I found that I don't get to have a whole lot of interaction with them before it fades. And I don't know if that's probably on my side, because I get overwhelmed sometimes in seeing them. I do remember one time, though, a beautiful, an older woman. She kind of reminded me of like a Quaker or Puritan. She appeared in my bedroom and I could see her. One morning, she was wearing an apron, and she had a broom and looked like she was sweeping. And I thought that was really interesting. And she looked at me and she said, it doesn't matter if you go or stay. And then instantly she changed. And you know what she changed into, Jeff? She changed into a dragon. She said, all that matters is that you love. That was her message. I'll never forget it. And when she changed, she shapeshifted. She shapeshifted from woman to dragon. People think, oh, dragons aren't real. They're the stuff of fable and mythology. But this woman, when she changed into the dragon, it poured love into me. And everything is telepathically communicated. And I just remember this incredible wave of love. And so I always say, it doesn't matter if you stay or go, all that matters is that you love. The most consistent teaching that I have received across the veil, it's all about love. It's all about love. We're so misguided on this planet if we are not embodying the essence of love. Like, we have missed, you can come here and make $1 million. You can come here and be the most successful person on the planet financially, in business, et cetera, et cetera. But if you travel this journey and you don't embody love, you have missed the entire point of being here. Those are the lessons that have translated from my out of body journeys.
After having so many out-of-body experiences, does it ever affect your normal waking life here and create confusion, like which reality are you really in? You know, this one or the other one? And if
I would say
so,
that,
let me just add this and then you can answer all of
okay,
that. And if so, how do you separate everything?
thank you for that. I think that's a very honest question. In the early days, I'm not going to lie to you. In the early days, I used this as a form of escapism because I was having a hard life and I was having a really hard time. And so, it became a really interesting thing for me because if I didn't like something that was happening in my life, I could lay my body down and just walk out of it. That's a hell of a skill set, right? I don't have to take a drink or hit a drug or disappear into shopping, sex, gambling, or food. I can just literally walk out of my body. And, I did that for a period of time, for about 6 months to a year, where I was just leaving all the time because I just couldn't cope with life. And then something happened on the non-physical side. The teachers said, you're not here to escape. So I was grounded for a period of time where I didn't get to travel, meaning it was almost like my soul was restricting me from going so that I could deal with my life. Once I got a more balanced perspective and leveling out just in my life and my own trauma, my own grief, and all of those things, I began traveling again. For me now, it's 19 years into it. I'm very clear about this reality, and I'm very clear about the hereafter or the other reality or the other realms. One, I know that they're both here at the same time. I'm not really going anywhere. I'm just changing frequency. Everything is here right now, right here, right now, right here in this space. I'm not leaving. I'm just transferring my consciousness from one realm of reality into another realm of reality. So given that, I can keep it, I'm very aware of the frequency that I'm embodying and the earth plane. And yeah, I have to do my normal regular duties, go to the store, buy bananas, balance your checkbook or whatever, pay your bills. That's just a part of being in this system of reality. But I also have that other whole part of my life, which is a very rich part of my life that has informed a lot of my life here in terms of how I move, how I live, how I eat, how I breathe even in this world. A lot of it's informed from my journeys in the hereafter to understand, the vibration.
Are you encountering other beings besides yourself out there? And if so, are they all benevolent or are there malevolent beings out there causing havoc?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've encountered all kinds of beings. I am not so naive as to say that there's no malevolent forces. I think sometimes people want to say that everything is benevolent because it just makes them feel better and they can sleep better at night. I also know that there's different intentions and different agendas in beings from other dimensions. I have had maybe a couple of occurrences, handful of times where I was in the presence of something that felt incredibly malevolent. I'm very energy sensitive and I'm very intuitive. And anytime I'm in that space, I will immediately pull my energy back. I'm happy to say that most of my experiences have been on a much more positive, really beautiful, on the beautiful side of life. And that's why too, remember I talk about where you are in your life. Like I really try to make sure that my frequency, if you're going to travel outside of your body, I think it's really important to make sure you're in a good frame of mind. You're in a good frame of mind because you will meet your own demons and you will project them outside of yourself and call it a malevolent being. And you're just meeting the shadow side of you. So it's important to be in a good state of mind. It's important what you fill your brain with. Television programming, movies, conversation. So having a healthy focus also affects, because we're an integrated system. When I'm traveling outside of my body, I'm not leaving anything. I'm taking all of me with me. So if my focus here is misaligned, guess what? My focus there is going to be misaligned as well. And there you don't have the sweet buffer called time. Things are going to manifest instantly, and you're going to have to meet yourself. I would say that's been the biggest thing. Me working with my own shadows has been much more daunting than anything I would meet outside of myself. And I also too want to say I always set up the preface before I travel. I'm only met in light and love. And I don't necessarily so much so I say I trust every single thing out there. I trust my intention. I trust my heart. I trust my light. Because when I travel, I am carrying my light. And I trust that light is bright enough not to be absorbed into things that are incredibly misaligned with well-being.
Are you ever able to see future events while outside your body? And if so, do you have any idea what's coming in our near future?
Yes, the only thing, Jeff, that I can tell you, I always call it a very weird and morbid party trick. The only future events I've ever been able to see is death. Death of people in my experience and in my world. I have 4 really good friends who passed, interestingly, back to back in 4 years of time. And I saw every single one of those transitions before they happened. 2 of the people were absolutely healthy. They had heart attacks. Another person was ill. 2 of them had chronic illness. But I don't see future per se in the way that, someone would say, this is coming in 2025. I only, for whatever reason, have this very unique specified focus of being able to see death in the realm of those in my experience, which is not something actually that I actually wanted to. It's not a gift. It's not a gift that I wanted to have, but I do have it. I turn the volume down because it can be very unnerving to know those things. And it was. I've had some challenging times in seeing friends transition before they actually transition. Future events, I think there's always multiple timelines of any particular event. There's always more than one outcome. I believe there's always more than one way that any one specific event could unfold. But I do feel from what I have collectively gathered from my journeys, the frequency of the earth is rising. We are rising with the earth. Many people are making a mass exodus. A lot of people are leaving this planet. A lot of people are not aligned with moving forward because it's their soul's choice. I also want to say something to people. This whole thing about birth and death is a pretty big deal here, especially the death piece for all of us. The soul of a person, and this is what I can tell you, and I hope that maybe some of your audience can lean in on this and find comfort. When does someone die? Versus when does someone not die? When does someone live? When is someone healed? When is someone not healed? Did God make a mistake, right? Those are the big questions. What I say on a soul level, what I have been told by my teachers outside the body is that every soul has a mission, every soul has a curriculum, and that when a soul feels that its primary mission, soul could have multiple missions in one lifetime, that when a soul feels that its primary mission has been fulfilled, then it can go on. It can go on. That's why I always say, always defer to the soul. The soul is going to have the final word. This is where we as humans really struggle in our human experience, to know that the soul has the final word. We think other things have the final word. Your own personal soul has the final word of your life and of your death. And that's why I always say for myself, and I can't speak for anybody else, I try to have a soul-led life, like that my life is led by my soul, because whether my soul says you're going to be done in 24 hours or 48 hours, as long as I'm living aligned to that soul-led life, I'm always going to be at the highest and the best for me. It may not look like it to other people around me. It may not look like the highest and best is unfolding, but I trust in the journey of my soul. It always is unfolding for the highest and best evolution of each person.
Are we forced to reincarnate, or is that a choice?
Well, you're going to hear both sides of that we are and that we are not. I do believe ultimately we see, when we say we, who is the we that we're talking about? So if I want to say to you, Jeff, when you transition, you're going to have a choice. Now, it's interesting, me using that word, I'm very careful, even what I just said to you, because who is the you that I'm referring to? JeffMara, the personality? Jeff, the personality, or Jeff, the soul? Your soul is always going to have the choice. You are sovereign unto yourself. Every single being is sovereign unto themselves. Now, there are going to be people that tell you this is a prison planet, and I know I've seen all the contradictory teachings. You are sovereign unto yourself, and at the highest level, you are going to choose the highest path for your evolution, whether that means incarnation or not. Now, I know on a personality level, we've all said, I'm good and done here. Like, I don't want to come back, and I've said that myself many times, actually. However, yet I know that as soon as that leaves my mouth, I got to drop back into, okay, my soul is going to be sovereign in that decision. Because it is. What Darnella thinks today is probably going to be irrelevant down the road. My higher self, or people would say your higher self, your higher perspective. So,
have you been able to discover what your soul's purpose is this incarnation? And if so,
yes.
How can other people learn that?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I know what mine is, and it's been revealed to me. But more than just that, it's been lived. So look at it this way, Jeff. When you're born, okay, you're born into a certain family. You have a certain set of experiences. Those early childhood experiences set the template set the stage for your curriculum, right? 0 to 7. Science has shown that your subconscious mind, your programming is all in the body. By age 8, you're now reliving the program of your early childhood, which is why it's so hard to change when you get to be an adult, because you're just reenacting your childhood, and you really do it in relationships. That's where you really do it. You're going to replay those mom and dad dynamics, or those primary care guardians dynamics out in all of your relationships. So if you want to know what your soul came here to do, look where you've been the most challenged. Look at your struggles. Look at the places where you repeat over and over and over, the places that you can't seem to rise above. For me, like I said to you earlier, I think before we even started recording, my soul came here to play out a lot of its evolution through relationships, and repeating heartbreaking relationships over and over. All these men, all this man, that man, this love affair, that love affair, thinking this is the dream. I finally got the dream. I finally got the man. The pain, it's an avalanche. It's a continuation. It's a pattern. Some people, relationships, they meet their husband or wife in high school, and they go on to live this happy life. And for others of us, it is not that story. I was one of the latter. It was not that story for me. But through the pain of relationship, drove me into my spiritual journey. And ultimately, my soul came here to learn how to do what? Learn how to love myself. I came here for the entire curriculum of learning to love me, accepting me, loving me, believing in me, believing that I'm beautiful enough, believing that I'm smart enough, believing that I'm good enough, believing that I am worthy. That was my entire curriculum. Worthiness. But you know what? I also think the world at large, their curriculum is worthiness. Look at how much we assign our worth to things outside of ourselves. We have to have the car, the house, the this, the that, the clothes, the job, the money, right? So I came here on a very deeply intimate, personal level to learn my own worthiness. And furthermore, to say, in all those relationships I had in the past, more than likely it was never meant to work out with all those people, because it was not about me loving them, Jeff. It was about me loving me. It was about me loving me. And it's like the universe is like, okay, we're going to rock with you. We're going to roll with you. And we're going to go with as many men as you think you're going to get your worth through. We'll let you just plow through that experience. And each one going to get a little bit deeper, and you're going to be hurt just a little bit more until we have your undivided attention when you're driven to your knees. That's how it is with me and with every other person in this life in their curriculum. So the thing is, you want to know your curriculum? Where do you struggle? Where are you challenged? Where do you repeat yourself over and over and over and over and over? That's your curriculum.
What practical advice do you have for people out there who want to start having OBEs?
I'd say first and foremost to check your intentions and ask yourself, why do I want to do it? Like, why? You know, once you blow open that world, it's not I don't want to say it's not to be taken lightly. You know, you can see some things that you are not ready to see. You can see some things that you're not prepared to see. So I think first and foremost, check in with your intention. Ask yourself, why do I want to do this? What is my intention? What do I want to get out of it? And if they really want to do it, I would begin exploring and reading like Robert Monroe, all the Robert Monroe, every book he ever wrote, I read, and some of the other noticeable out-of-body travelers. Start researching near-death experiences. Read Raymond Moody's Life After Life. Start looking at some of the people who have done this. There are several people, even on YouTube, who have done it and who have channels and talk about it, and some people teach it. I find that teaching, I mean, there can be definitely effective ways of doing it, but I think everybody's different. I think everybody is different. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. Everybody's different. I'll just say that in terms of how they get out of their body, why they get out of their body, what their intention is to get out of their body. I just think it's more important to have a level of self-awareness before you do anything.
Do you think we're supposed to be having OBEs?
Well, I think it's a natural part of our existence because we have them every day at night when we sleep, whether we remember them or not. Now, whether we're supposed to consciously manipulate energy fields so that we do travel outside of our body, I think that's a very individual, personal choice. For me, it has benefited and tremendously enhanced and improved my life. But again, I think, you know, my intentions for doing it, I wanted to understand myself better. I wanted to expand in my self-awareness. I wanted to get the mysteries to decoding myself. So for me, it's been incredible. You know, so I'd say if you want to explore and expand your consciousness, absolutely. But I think you have to pair that with knowledge and information. I also study quantum physics and neuroscience and the masters and the ancient wisdom, because you have to be able to have context of even what you see when you get out of body. How do you even know what you're looking at? And how do you even understand what appears before you? You have to have some type of ability to be able to ground it. That is, I would say, is the most important thing, being able to ground. Because when you're traveling, you're between worlds, you got to be able to integrate that. So yeah, I can go up the street to the Whole Foods and buy my bananas, right? And then I come back here and go to bed tonight and I'm in another dimension, conversing with someone in my life who's passed away. And we're talking about karmic destiny or soul ties or the future or incarnation, or we're talking about, you know, all kinds of things. And you have to be able to wake up in the morning and be able to blend going to the store, paying my bills, with understanding the depth of my soul blueprint. And you have to be able to braid and weave that and marry that into some type of reality where you don't become disjointed and people think you're walking around talking to yourself, right? So I think that's just practical grounding for the experiences.
Have you seen any animals out there like your pets?
Yes, I had two beautiful cats, a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old. Sunset in Malibu, and Malibu was my 19-year-old. I have a very special relationship with Malibu and Sunset. And when they passed, it was really hard for me. As anybody who knows that are very deeply connected to their pets. But you know, my animals come to me. I have a lot of feline energy. I have feline energy. The lioness is my spirit guide. I am a feline, and so I often travel with cats in packs. Like I just travel. Matter of fact, I was traveling just last night with cats. So yes, my cats do come. One of my cats is reincarnated, and I do believe he is coming back. I've been told he's coming back. I will get 2 more at some point in the near future. So I'm, one of those cats will travel with me through my lifetime here, and he's one of my soulmates. So our pets are definitely around us. If someone has lost a pet, a beloved pet, please know, please, it is never an accident. The pets that are in your life, they are soul teachers. Oftentimes, they are masterful teachers. Dogs specifically are teachers of unconditional love, and cats are often here to teach you boundaries. But also, it's really important that people understand when they have pets, it's important to treat them well. And they're not just animals. These animals have a soul. These animals have souls, and they have memory. And a lot of these animals are much more even evolved than us as humans, even though we would think we're the higher species. But they have a lot they can teach us if we are humble and we observe. I want to tell you something, Jeff. I had an experience once where I had a classmate shot a wolf. Okay. And he posted it on Facebook, and he put the rifle beside the wolf, and I saw it, and I saw it and just penetrated me deeply. And I just turned it off, and I got off, and I shut my whole phone down because I don't know, it just really upset me. Do you know that night when I went to bed, I got up out of my body, walked into my living room out of body, and there was an animal at my door. And I opened the door, although I didn't need to open it because I could just stick my head through it. But this animal walked into my living room, and I looked on it, and I saw on its right side all the blood. This animal was the wolf that was shot and killed. When I looked at that wolf, my emotional reaction triggered in the quantum field, and it drew him into my energy field. So that when I was out of my body, he came to me, that wolf came to me and delivered a message. And the message was to tell humanity that they are not trophies. They are not to be hunted for game or sport, that animals are to be respected. The elephants are not to be taken for their tusk, and the lions are not to be hunted for trophy. And that we as humanity, that was the message that I got from the wolf. So, I get a lot of messages from these animals. I see a lot of different cats. I see cats. I saw a cat last week that we don't even have in this realm. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was breathtaking. I saw one of my favorite animal experiences was the purple jaguar. And this animal was so beautiful. And I just remember its fur was so soft, and this animal loved me. Like, I just remember, like, I cried for days for this animal because this animal just loved me, That's one thing. When you leave this earth experience, when you get beyond this realm, there's so many more colors and flowers, and there's so many animals. Like, we think this is it. I mean, this is just the very beginning. There's such a vast array of things. I don't even know what to call them because I don't know what they are. We don't have them here. But I've experienced a lot of them, and it's just been amazing to see them and interact with them, and
Who else have you received messages from besides animals?
Oh my God, I'm gonna tell you my favorite OBE of all times. I mean, my best friend had lupus. Natasha Munson, she was an award-winning writer, and she and I were going to change the world together. And she passed in 2012 from lupus, chronic lupus. And when she died, I felt like the bottom just dropped out for me. Like I struggled with her transition. I mean, I struggled with it until the point where I thought I would literally have a nervous breakdown because she was my best friend. And I grieved, and I just remember the grief was endless. And so I had two occasions. About 3 weeks after she passed, I remember one night crying myself to sleep, as I did almost every night. And I was falling asleep, and I was in that twilight state. And I looked up, and she walked straight through my bedroom wall. And I just remember sitting straight up, and my eyes just in shock that I could see her. And she simply said to me one sentence. She said, "Stop crying for me. I am happy, and I am in my real home." And she turned around and she walked back through the wall. And I just remember feeling like I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, but she was there. It's real as day. And then, again, I stopped crying for about a week. And then, then I forgot because, we forget, right? And then I had the most unbelievable experience. And this one is the one I said I would tell the world, anybody that listened to me, I'll tell them this story. I dedicate this story to anybody of your viewers who are watching who have lost loved ones. I woke up one morning about 5 a.m, and there was this man standing in my room, and I could see him. Like I could see him as plain as I could see you. And he looked like a wizard. I hate to be so he looked like a wizard from Harry Potter. He looked like a straight up wizard. And I thought, this is really interesting. And I was half in my body, half out of my body. So I had a 1 foothold in the physical reality, but I could also see the non-physical reality. And I saw him in my doorway. And he's like a wizard. And I thought, well, okay, I don't want the wizard here in my bedroom at 5 a.m. Like, what's he doing here is what I'm thinking, right? Because I'm still me. Like, I'm having these amazing, but I'm still me. I'm still Darnella. So when I'm out of the body, I can do this. This is the thing. I do with my hands, and the energy that I can emanate from my fingers will move anything out of my way. Okay, it's like almost feel like I'm in the Matrix or something, but I can move it, right? Effortless outside of my body. Now this morning I see the wizard there. I do that, and the wizard doesn't move. And I know one thing right away: Holy Mother of God, he's stronger than I am. That's why I couldn't move him. So then I thought, I hope and pray I didn't offend the wizard, because I don't know who this is. And he takes out this spinning globe, pulls it from underneath his robe, and the moment I see it, Jeff, I'm enchanted, and it's purple. It's this beautiful form but it's a purple but magenta. We don't even have that color here. But he tosses it to me like a basketball. And I reached out my arms to grab the spinning globe, and immediately someone grabs onto my hands, pulls me out all the way out of my body. I'm wide awake, fully conscious, pulls me right into the next realm. And when I got my orientation about me, I saw that it was my best friend, Natasha. And when I saw her, my heart just started beating, and I just jumping up and down like children. And we grabbed each other's hands, and we kind of leaned back, and our kids would lean back and they hold each other's hands. And we were spinning around in this incredibly breathtaking garden. I'd never seen such beauty, and I couldn't believe it. And I remember saying in that moment, Death, I beat you. I beat you, because I grieved so hard. And there she was right there, and I was holding her hand, and it was as real as my hand to yours. And as I went to say something, I said, oh my God, man. I said, where you been? She'd been dead about 6 months. I said, where you been? And then I went to say, my next thought, Jeff, this is all telepathic, remember? My next thought was, I was trying to tell her, I miss you. But guess what? When I went to say, I miss you, in that realm where she was, I couldn't even formulate the words. Do you know why? Why do you think, Jeff? Why couldn't I say to her, I miss you?
She already knew what you were going to say?
Nope, that's not why. The reason I couldn't say, I miss you, was because it didn't exist. It wasn't real. So in this realm, if it's not real, you can't even think it. So me saying, I miss you, is really my own perception and my own disconnection and my illusion of separation. What would there be to miss? And so my brain wasn't even allowed. And I went to say, I miss you. But instead, the only thing, I could only say one thing to her. And that was, I love you. I could only say, I love you. And the only reason I could say, I love you, was because that was the only thing that was real. And I'm telling you right now, I said, first of all, thank you for listening, because I always said when I had that experience, I wanted to tell the world that story. And I just want to say this right now, like we're living in a very polarized time, and the world is going crazy, the left, the right, the middle, the who, the this, the up, the down. Let me tell you something. One of my favorite sayings is, if it costs you your peace, the price is too high. And every single day, waking up in the morning, you have to look at and say, what do I want to focus on? What do I want to give my attention to? What am I choosing to believe in? Like, really get in here and examine, what is it that I'm believing in? Do I want to spend all day online arguing with people, trying to get people to change their mind? If it costs you your peace, the price is too high. And at the end of the day, I think from this respect, because whether you realize it or not, or we all realize one day everybody's going to have an out of body experience. It's going to be the ultimate out of body experience. Every single one of us is going to meet that moment. We are going to take our final breath. And then you got to do two things. One, you're going to have to surrender. You're going to surrender everything that you think you know about who you even are, your identity, your body, your race, your bank account, whatever you think is important here, you're going to surrender it. And the second thing is you're going to have to trust what happens on the other side of your breath. Where do I go? What will happen to me when? One day this will end. And I think, I've had a lot of death in my lifetime. I've experienced a lot of death. Death has brought me to my knees. But I have a lot of respect for death because death has been my greatest teacher. And it is death that has taught me the value of this moment. It is death that has organized my thoughts around my future, that I do not waste and dwindle my time away here, that it's purposeful and that it's meaningful, not necessarily from the way that the neighbor would think, but meaningful for me and what I'm offering to the planet and what I'm trying to share some of my experiences. And, I asked many years ago, why is this happening? Why do I get to go out of my body? Why am I seeing these things? I asked my friends, do you guys see this kind of stuff? They're like, hell no. We're not seeing the stuff you're seeing. So my thing is, what am I to do with that? Do I have a responsibility to share what I know at the risk of being criticized? We live in a world where people aren't always so nice. But yes, I'm sharing what I've experienced because I think it could be helpful and useful. And if I didn't have it, I don't know what I would do in the world the way that it is now. I have a very strong base. Let me tell you, Jeff, I have a strong base because I know there's so much more than this. And I don't have to take the minister's word on Sunday. I've seen it for myself.
Darnella, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Do you have a website with a contact form or an email that you'd like to give?
Yes, I do. I have a website and I have an email. And I also, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, a lot of my out-of-body experiences are, I have a new book that's out called The Next Breath by Darnella Ford, and it's available on Amazon. And this, I do want to share. This is, I put my heart and soul into this. Has a lot of my wisdom from my spiritual journey. So if you feel inspired, but yes, my email address, if anybody, and I would love to hear from people. Listen, I'd love to hear from anybody. My email address is Darnella, DARNELLA at Journey to Worthy, and that is just simply how it's spelled, JOURNEY, TO, and Worthy, WORTHY.org. Darnella at journeytoworthy.org. My website is simply journeytoworthy.org. And you can see some of my work there. And some of the healing work that I do and the healing retreats I facilitate. And I just want to say, really, Jeff, I want to just take a moment and I really want to offer you a blessing. You're an incredible human. And whether you realize it or not, people say you're doing the Lord's work. What does that mean? But you really are doing a tremendous service to this planet by creating this channel and by giving people like me and others a voice. And really, you are in service to the universe. You are helping expand the consciousness of this planet. And let me tell you, good karma return to you 1,000,000-fold, really, Jeff. So I just want to give you a blessing, a true gratitude for just taking the time to reach back and have me on your show. It just really appreciate it beyond words, truly.
Thank you. Darnella, before we wrap it up, Can you give us one more positive message?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I want to say one of the most important things that I do feel like it takes so much courage to live this life. And it takes so much courage to live this life aligned in your own truth. Your truth may not look like the world's truth for you. One of the things in working with people that I've often observed is that people are just afraid. People are afraid because you know what? You may have to leave that relationship. Maybe that relationship doesn't serve you, or that marriage, maybe that job. Maybe where you are in your life no longer serves you. And oftentimes we want to recreate something new, but we're not willing to let go of the old. Have the courage to follow your own true north magnetic star, the journey of your soul that is calling you forward. I always say there's two things, before this life ends, we're going to have to surrender all that we believe we knew and trust all that we cannot see. Those are the two aspects, right? If we can develop that now, surrender what you know, what you even think you know, and trust that which you cannot see, which has maybe not yet even been birthed. This is a faith walk, this whole life. So many people play small because they're so afraid to let go. And I know right now, Jeff, somebody is watching this podcast that is right on the fence, and they saying, oh Lord, I know I need to leave this relationship. I know this doesn't serve me. I know this job doesn't serve me. I know. And I had a job for many years in corporate America, and I knew that it wasn't serving me, even though it was paying me very, very well. And I was waiting for something to change so that I could leave that job. I waited for years for something to change, so I could hit the lottery, something could happen. But you know what happened, Jeff? I left, and then something changed. Oftentimes, we have to make first move. So I would say to the people, be courageous. Don't be afraid to name your truth, because oftentimes our truths live outside of the parameter of popular thinking, popular opinion, your own North Star. Follow it. That is my final word.
Darnella, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Jeff. What a joy. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.